lot of people ask me, like, were there seeds of doubt along the way? And there definitely were. But most of the seeds of doubt, I was like just far too immature to actually follow up on. I'd say the first seed of doubt is when I was 19 and I was reading this book called Stone Butch Blues with my girlfriend at the time. And the book is featuring a main character who's a lesbian, a butch lesbian who transitions. And she loses touch with the lesbian community because people stop perceiving her to be female. And she discusses, how on one hand, it's easier in her day-to-day life because back in those days, butch lesbians really had very few options. They could work in factories with men and do other blue-collar work, but they couldn't really become anything, I guess, more with more prestige than that. And so that's what a lot of masculine lesbians did back in those days. So in her daily life, she worked some blue-collar job. It was easier. But, her own lesbian community that she had come of age in had stopped recognizing her as female. And so there's this inherent conflict. And I had sort of a little thought at the time, which was like, whoa, like I've never given myself the chance to be a lesbian and to come to terms with that. But I was 19 and already by 2018, 2019, there was no semblance of lesbian communities in my generation. Everything was queer. The only people identifying as lesbians were straight men. And all of the actual lesbians had either transitioned or started calling themselves queer. So there was no lesbian label or identity under which women who are exclusively same-sex attracted could actually organize any kind of communal space. So there was nothing for me. There was no way out. Like there was no off-ramp. So I just stayed trans. And the second more major, I guess, seed of doubt that I'd started to experience was, well, I really attribute it to an experience that I had in a bomb shelter in May of 2021 when I lived through my first war in Israel. I like to, I trace my journey of desistance and detransition more or less back to that moment because it was a real starting point for me. I was with a different girl at this time. I was at our apartment and we were getting ready to go to oddly enough, a drag queen show in Tel Aviv. And we kept delaying our departure from the house because it's like two people with ADHD, total planning chaos. The cats needed to be fed. And then we kept missing one bus after the next. And, finally we'd gotten our shoes on. We were standing by the door. We were getting ready to go. And then boom, suddenly we hear a siren. And I look at this girl and I'm like, what the hell is this? And she says, oh, they're launching rockets at us. And I'm like, what are we supposed to do? And then she looks at me and she says, well, we need to run to the bomb shelter. And then I ask her, where's the bomb shelter? And then she says, I don't know. I'm new to this neighborhood. So there are two cats at her place. We have to pack up the cats and, get our stuff and just run for it. And the first few sirens, we didn't know where the bomb shelter was. So we just went to the lowest level of the apartment because you're less likely to be hit either by a rocket or rocket debris when you're at the lowest level as opposed to a higher level. And at some point, we'd found the bomb shelter. So we had this ritual over the 11 days of running back and forth between bomb shelters. And there was one time when we didn't make it to the bomb shelter in time. And so my girlfriend and I and the cats were crouching under a tree. And suddenly we see 3 rockets fly above our heads, one right after the other. And they rip through the air. And the siren is blaring. It's terrifying. The ground is shaking underneath you as these rockets are intercepted. And I had like this brief moment flash before my eyes where I almost envisioned myself laying in a hospital bed, recovering from an elective radical double mastectomy where I couldn't, move my hands above my shoulders and realizing that, if I heard that same siren, I wouldn't be able to run. I wouldn't be able to save myself. And I thought, if I were to do this, like, what would come of me? Because you can't predict when wars are going to happen. You can schedule time off of work for a surgery, but you can't schedule time off of work for a war because it could happen at any moment. Like, I was expecting to go to a drag queen show in Tel Aviv, and suddenly I hear a siren. All of this is unpredictable. So that was one moment in which I sort of started to see how ideology, what it looks like when you're living this life that's in direct opposition to your biological reality, and the ways in which that lifestyle directly conflicts with being able to live a truly independent life.